Some stories attribute great powers to the moon. It does have some effect on us.
Since the time of the very first Apollo moon missions,
the Eagle has landed.
Researchers have pored over photos of the moon, looking for structures. And they found some unusual things.
Only 300 kilometers away from where Apollo 11 ended up landing, this area has undeniable architecture that looks like what you would see from obelisks.
Somebody built something on the moon a long, long time ago, and I don't think it was Earthlings.
The entire object may be of artificial origin. My question is, who built the moon?
Since the dawn of civilization, mankind has credited its origins to gods and other visitors from the stars. What if it were true? Did extraterrestrial beings really help to shape our history? And if so, might the answer be found not on Earth, but on the moon? Cape Canaveral, Florida, February 8th, 2016. NASA and Lockheed Martin project managers announced preparations are underway for the Exploration Mission 1, a manned Orion spacecraft journey to the moon. The Chinese, Russian, and Indian space agencies follow suit, unveiling their own manned lunar exploration plans. These missions would be the first time humans traveled beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972. But what could be the reason for this renewed interest in the moon? And just why has it taken humanity so long to go back?
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
July 20th, 1969.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Okay, I just checked.
Over 1 billion people worldwide are glued to their television sets as they watch the shadowy figure of astronaut Neil Armstrong slowly step off the ladder of the Apollo 11 lunar module onto the surface of the moon.
It's very fine. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The moment marks one of the most important events in the history of civilization. It is the first time a human being has set foot on alien terrain.
Apollo 11 is what people think of when you talk about Apollo today and Neil Armstrong setting foot on the moon. The moon is roughly 220,000 miles away from the Earth. Even the best telescopes can't see what you can see when you're just standing on the surface.
Before we went to the moon, NASA was cautioned by doomsday predictors and different people. People wonder what it would be like on a place like that, so different from this place here.
The idea of landing people on the moon has been in the imagination long before the technology was anywhere near making it possible. After all, to be on the moon is to step into a mythological landscape. The place of stories, the place of wonder, to step into the heavens and stand on ground of a kind that is not Earth.
It was a huge moment for the human spirit. While it was Americans that put a man on the moon, it was considered a victory for all of humanity. Suddenly, science fiction became real. and it opened up a new age of exploration.
I think that every journey starts with a first step. The moon was our first step into the universe, into our solar system. It is awesome to think that already 50 years ago, we became extraterrestrials on another planet.
The moon has captivated the imagination of humanity since the dawn of civilization. It is a quarter the size of the Earth and is by far the most dominant celestial body in the night sky.
It takes about 30 days to go round the Earth. The moon glows, and that's not because of any property within the moon. It's reflecting the rays of the sun which causes it to glow. The reason that the moon has phases is that the Earth blocks the light of the sun, and as the moon moves round the Earth, so it incrementally gets a little bit more and a little bit more of the sun's rays.
The moon's importance is very great. It leads to tides, which help life transition from living in the ocean to living on land. It also stabilizes the Earth's tilt relative to its orbit.
Without the moon, gravitational influences can cause the poles of planets to wander around kind of drunkenly, like a drunken sailor. The Earth would have been a much more chaotic place for life, especially advanced life, to develop if it wasn't for the moon.
While the moon is largely responsible for allowing life to flourish on Earth, this celestial body itself is inhospitable. It has no breathable oxygen, and temperatures on the surface reach extremes from 253 degrees Fahrenheit when it's facing the sun to minus 243 degrees in the shade.
It was a very serious environment because there's no oxygen. So the astronauts, once they were on the moon, they have to be completely sealed.
It's surface gravity, which is what really counts if you're going to go there. It's about 1/6 of that on Earth, which is why when you see those grainy images of the early astronauts, they're sort of bouncing around. And the moon has no atmosphere whatever.
The astronauts, once they were on the moon, suddenly they were able to look at the world that they'd grown up on, the Earth, from a different place. They were able to see all of mankind in all its tininess in the universe. And that, I know, had a very profound effect on the astronauts.
Reaching the moon was such an unbelievable feat that even to this day, many people are convinced the entire event was actually staged in a Hollywood studio. But ancient astronaut theorists suggest not only did we land on the moon, but what we found there was more incredible than we know.
During the 1969 Apollo moon mission, after the landing, there was a very strange 2-minute gap in radio transmissions. And what happened during those 2 minutes has been subject to a lot of controversy.
Neil, this is Houston, radio check, over. Columbia, this is Houston, over. More white object.
According to scientist and NASA researcher Otto Bender, various ham radio operators were able to intercept secret communications with mission control that were not made public.
The astronauts apparently talked about seeing extraterrestrial objects on the moon, including flying saucers parked along the edge of a crater within their view.
Now, the truth of it is that each of the astronauts had a separate medical channel. That channel was not public, and it could have been very easily used to communicate information that you didn't want to be heard over the general public transmissions. What's really interesting about that story, though, is the fact that within 30 minutes of the landing on the moon, that story was circulating around NASA that, hey, guess what? They saw something on the rim of a crater. They were all upset. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know if they should go out.
It is interesting when you watch the feed of when they came back from the moon. And they're not sitting there jumping up and down for joy and saying, I had the most incredible experience in my life. I was on the moon. They're not saying that. They look very sullen, very depressed. They're looking down. They almost look like they want to vomit. That's how disturbed they look. Could they have seen something there that they didn't want to tell the public because of the implications?
I believe that what this country set out to do was something that was going to be done sooner or later.
We find for the first time that man has the flexibility or the option of either walking this planet or some other planet. It's a beginning of a new age.
After Apollo 11, NASA would send 6 more manned missions to the moon, culminating with Apollo 17 in 1972.
One of the most interesting questions with regard to our interaction with the moon is why we have never gone back there again since the Apollo missions. And what else is very telling is that although the USSR at the time was getting to be quite able to send its own astronauts to the moon, it never seems to have done so. Could it be that there were agencies associated with the moon, aliens or other beings who had warned humanity to stay away for some reason?
Is it possible that the American astronauts were not alone on the moon? Is that why, after Apollo 17, we never went back? Some ancient astronaut theorists propose, and